All right, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I'm your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names and kicking candy ass live in Illinois color here with you on Grande's Graveyard. What's going on, everybody? Hope everything is going well. The weekend is upon us. It's a 3-day weekend. I am super fucking stoked about that, man. Everything is going good in the hood. We are chilling like villains over here. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and honestly, one that I would consider my favorite anthology horror film of all time. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, huh, really? That one? But to be honest, yeah. And I'm really stoked to talk about this one. It is none other than Dan Curtis's Trilogy of Terror Part 2. Yes, from 1996, the same year yours truly was born. Late 96, I'll give you that. But it's nice that I was born in the same year as my favorite anthology horror film, and of course, the same year as Scream, The Craft, Wolf. There's a lot of good movies that came out in 1996. That was a good year for cinema all around. And I just figured, why not do a show today on this movie? Because this is one of those movies that doesn't get enough love. And I feel like very fucking few people have seen this movie. And I think that's a crying shame because I like this better than the first one. I think this is a wonderful film, and I think Dan Curtis just absolutely late career throughout a perfect film. I think this is a great, great movie, and I'm gonna love getting into this one today. But I figured I'd start the show off a little bit getting into Dan Curtis, the guy, because he's one of those masters of horror that nobody ever really mentions. And it's kind of mind boggling as to why, because I think the guy's made some great films. And coincidentally, not only has he made my favorite anthology horror film, he's made my favorite haunted house horror film in Burnt Offering. So I just figured I'd run through his filmography a little bit here, just give you guys a little bit of a kind of who Dan Curtis was, because he's one of those guys, he just does not get the credit, man. He's the creator of Dark Shadows, which was this kind of horror soap of the late 60s, and it was super low budget. Like, don't get me wrong, those shows were, and to this day, have not really aged the greatest. They look like shit. But it was the first soap opera with that horror touch to it, and putting that horror touch to it really gave a nice, distinct feel to that particular show. And in a lot of ways, it invented horror soap operas. And thus, 50 years later, you have a Johnny Depp reboot movie that got made. I never bothered to see it. It looked terrible to me. But the fact that years and years later, that movie and that kind of cult fan base still exists for Dark Shadows, I think is actually pretty incredible. It's no small feat for sure. That's definitely goes without saying. And Dan Curtis was the guy that came up with the idea. And even though he didn't have that much of a budget, he said, hey, we're going to be creative. We're going to be innovative. And that's, I think, the number one thing that I love about Dan Curtis is his creativity. I think he's a really creative guy, and he's done some really good horror films here. A lot of them definitely TV films. I mean, I see a lot of TV here. But the first one that really, really catches my eye is a little made-for-TV movie called Trilogy of Terror. Yeah, that's right. I've probably pumped fake a couple people thinking I'm going to talk about something else. But the first Trilogy of Terror, I don't own the blue of that one. I only own the blue of the second one. But the first Trilogy of Terror is one of those horror movies that I grew up watching. It was one of those that they showed on TV Land or TNT. It's one of those where they'd show it late night. And basically the idea and the concept was there were going to be 3 stories, all starring the same actress in different horror anthology segments. So in the original films, the legendary late great Karen Black, may she rest in peace, she plays 4 different characters in 3 different segments in one film. So I thought that was super cool, a super cool concept to say, hey, you're my Scream Queen. I need you to be the lead in every single one of these segments, and you're going to have to really expand your acting performances. See, in the first film, the first segment, Karen Black plays this kind of laid back, very buttoned down teacher. And you think she gets, into this relationship with this student that we think is taking advantage of her. And there's a little twist towards the end where we get to see who's really taking advantage of who. I really liked that story in the first one. That's probably my favorite story of the first one, come to think of it. The second story was about these two like evil twin sisters. One of them was you think is good, one of them you think is bad. And I don't know, I love that one too. Karen Black has a lot of fun playing the nice role and of course the bitch role. I always liked that. And then in the final segment, the most famous segment of the original Trilogy of Terror is the Zuni fetish doll, where Karen Black gets this Zuni fetish doll and it basically comes to life and she battles it for a good 20 minutes. That's a really, really fun anthology segment. And it's one that for some reason in popular culture has really gained a lot of notoriety. Like I feel like a lot of people they don't remember Trilogy of Terror as much as they remember that particular segment. I think people just remember that segment and go, "Oh, I love that movie." But to be honest, I actually think the first segment in the first film is the best of the three segments. So it's pretty weird, but I don't know. I enjoy the first Trilogy of Terror. I know that if you look online and look up like best or most loved hard made for TV movies, Trilogy of Terror usually comes in number one. It is the gold standard. And while I love the film, I will say that there are definitely horror television movies I like a little bit more. Like I definitely like Let's Scare Jessica to Death a little bit more. Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, Trilogy of Terror 2, which we will get into. I mean, that's the main topic of the show today. But it's incredible to see how big of a legacy that the original Trilogy of Terror has left behind, because it's a movie that I believe is maybe 72, 73 minutes long. It's barely feature length if you call it feature length. However, it's two things. It's Dan Curtis's great direction, and I think Dan Curtis is a very underrated director. And it's Karen Black's performance in every segment as four different characters. And it's her ability saying, hey, I can do crazy bitch, but I can also do laid back. I can also do low key, where I'm going to come out at the end and go, oh, I was pulling the strings all along. I really like Karen Black's performance in the original film. I think that and Dan Curtis are the really big reasons to watch it. And of course, the very entertaining killer doll segment at the end. I absolutely adore the first Trilogy of Terror. That's the first one that really catches my eye in his filmography. And then he went on a couple years later to make probably my favorite haunted house film of all time, a movie that I will definitely do a full episode on someday, so I won't go too in depth. But it's from 1976, I believe. Let's double check IMDb here. Yes, from 1976. It is Dan Curtis's Burnt Offerings. Yes, Burnt Offerings, starring Oliver Reed, of course, Karen Black again, Burgess Meredith in a small role, and Betty Davis, the late great Betty Davis. I believe actually, yeah, all of those people have passed away. So it's sad. The entire cast of that film is pretty much gone. I don't know if the kid's still around, but all the grown-up actors, they are all sadly passed on. But that's a phenomenal film, probably my favorite haunted house film of all time, and one of the only theatrical movies for Dan Curtis, which is absolutely fucking blasphemy to me. Because if I'm a critic or if I'm a producer and I see Burnt Offerings in the 70s, I'm calling Dan Curtis and making a fucking 5-picture deal with that motherfucker and saying, dude, the palette is yours. My money is yours. Please go and make more movies like this, because this is everything, anything and everything horror movies should be. Burnt Offerings tells a story of Karen Black and Oliver Reed's character. They're a husband and wife, and they have a son, and they move into this house, and basically all they have to do is take care of it for the summer, and they're going to get some ungodly amount of money. In similar vein to The Shining, right? Instead of the summer, it's the winter in The Shining. And if they take care of it, and they also have this old woman that's crazy old upstairs, and they basically just have to keep her alive for the summer. And basically all shit starts to turn loose and shit hits the fan, and man, it's just a wonderfully done haunted house film, because the house itself feeds off them. It's one of the haunted house films where the house is really the main it's the main antagonist, and it's the main bad guy. And it's so amazing how many characteristics you can give to something that's not living. It's just such a creepy ass movie. Like there are points where certain characters start to die off, and the house, every time somebody dies, like refurbishes itself. So the garden with all these dead plants, when someone dies the next day, all the plants are alive. It's almost like they took her soul, and now her soul brings life to the plants and the house. And I don't know, just brilliant stuff, man. Oliver Reed is fucking great in it, man. He is even more scary in that than he is in The Brood. And that's saying a lot because Oliver Reed was a scary motherfucker, man. I loved Oliver Reed. I think he's a really, really underrated actor. And man, he just gives a wonderful performance in that film. And of course, Karen Black, the two of them butting heads throughout the entire movie, yelling at each other, arguing and stuff like that. And the house kind of playing tricks on them to make them think that one is against their son or the other is against their son. There are points where they're both like, you are trying to kill my son and stuff. There's a point where Oliver Reed nearly drowns his own son because he's possessed and he has no idea. That's a terrifying scene, man. There's so many scary ass fucking scenes in it. I would have to think the kid in real life is traumatized now because, man, I for one, I would be traumatized if I had to shoot scenes where Oliver Reed was trying to drown my dumbass, especially if I was 10 years old, man. I mean, it's traumatic to watch as a viewer. So being an actor in it, actually being there on the set, I could not imagine in my wildest dreams, and nor do I want to. I really, really like I love that Bette Davis is in the film. She does a really, really good job. I love the kind of mortician guy who shows up. He keeps showing up and he has the coffin and you're just wondering, oh, who's next? Who's going in the coffin next? That was just a creepy ass visual, creepy music, visuals. The movie, it looks like a Grindhouse film, even though it's not. The score of the film is wonderful. I think it's the most underrated haunted house movie of all time. I really do. And I will say it's my favorite haunted house movie of all time. Just for the final shot alone, it's not something I want to spoil on here, but it's something every single time I see it, I get chills. And I think of a director that nowadays is getting the mainstream attention, is getting the mainstream money to make the movies that he wants to make. He's getting that palette so he can be the artist that he wants to be, and that's James Wan. I think James Wan, you look at The Conjuring, you see a lot of parallels to what Burnt Offerings was. I can't go into details. I don't want to spoil anything, but I definitely think there are some parallels there. And I think that's the coolest thing about Burnt Offerings. It's inspired so many movies to come after it. I think even if you watch The Shining, there's a lot of The Shining that's in Burnt Offerings, and Burnt Offerings came first, and in my opinion, did better. And I know a lot of people will go, wait a minute, you like Burnt Offerings better than The Shining? No, I don't. But I do think that for what it's worth, for when it comes to haunted house movies, I don't think you can top Burnt Offerings. I think it's the perfect encapsulation of what that type of movie should be. It's scary. It has great, phenomenal acting. Nobody can trust anybody, so it's hard for us as a viewer to get comfortable with anybody. And once I'm uncomfortable with my cast, the people that I'm trying to watch and trying to get behind, that makes it even more of an uncomfortable, unsettling view for the viewer. And man, I think that's really tough to do. I love Burnt Offerings, and that's a film that I promise you, if it's not this October season, I will definitely do an episode on that because that's one of those movies. It's perfect to watch on Halloween night. It's the perfect haunted house movie. Burnt Offerings, I cannot say enough for that one. I think that's a 10 out of 10 personally. And did a horror anthology called Dead of Night, which is it's another TV movie. I saw that one, really liked that one too. And actually, there's a story that he remade, and it's my favorite one in Trilogy of Terror II. So I really always liked Dead of Night. The first segment, the first segment's like this guy and he gets in this old car and like travels back to the 20s. It was almost like a really elongated Twilight Zone episode, and I just didn't really care for it. I think the actor was Ed Begley. I forget that fucking actor's name. He's in Pineapple Express as the dad who, I'm coming out with a gun, and starts shooting at James Franco. It's that actor. He did a good job, but I don't know. The first segment of that, But the other two, really liked the other two. And of course, one of the other two is the Bobby segment that he did remake for Trilogy of Terror Part 2, which I'll get into here. But I don't know, looking at more of his filmography here, yeah, you get a lot more of Dark Shadows. You get a movie called Me and the Kid, which I've actually never heard of in my life. That one, it apparently went to theaters. I don't know. I'm looking here. I've never heard of this movie. I don't know. I've never seen Me and the Kid, but that brings me to the movie, the topic at hand of the evening. I've been warming up for this one. I watched it last night to prep, watched all the features. Not too many features on this, but I got to say, shout out to Michael Felsher and Kino Lorber for putting this one out in high def, because this is one of those movies that I have a nice little history with this one. I will never forget it. I was maybe, I want to say 8 or 9. And we had just finished trick-or-treating. It was Halloween night. sorting candy, and this little movie came on the TV called Trilogy of Terror II. And I'll never forget the opening with the gravestones, his Trilogy of Terror 2, and then the rose petals slowly dying as the opening credits crawl. That visual right then and there, and that will be the thumbnail, just automatically hook, line, and sinkered my ass. I was glued to the television after seeing that, and that little eerie kind of synth music, right? And the three stories that followed just are everything and anything I want with a great anthology horror film. You have a little bit of everything in here. And I'll get into all the stories individually, but I think as a whole, this movie as an anthology, it's fantastic. And I can get into little stories here. The first one, well, actually, no, let me rewind. Let me get into the lead actress of this film. So basically, after the original Trilogy of Terror, Dan Curtis said, hey, why not come back? Why not make a sequel? Why not make a quick buck? Why not? He couldn't get Karen Black back. I don't know if they tried to get Karen Black back. There's never been any word, but apparently they couldn't get her back. And he had to go with a young up-and-coming actress. Enter Lysette Anthony, who I think she does an even better job than Karen Black did in the original. And that kills me to say that, because I love me some Karen Black, especially in the first Trilogy of Terror, Burns Offerings, and even in House of a Thousand Corpses years and years later. I love Karen Black. She is one of my favorite scream queens of all time, and she does not get her due, which is a crying shame. But that is what it is. Lysette Anthony, though, in this film, all her performances in all three segments are fantastic. Again, they have her in each one of the segments playing a different character. And I think she does a wonderful job. I love her. She carries this film from the word go. And man, I thought she did wonderful with it. I really, really do. I like Lysette Anthony. Basically, the first segment is called The Graveyard Rats. The Grande's Graveyard Rats, right? And it tells the story of this awful gold-dicking bitch played by, of course, Lysette Anthony. And she is married to this old wheelchair-bound billionaire, and all she wants is basically to earn his inheritance when he dies. He's this really nasty old man, though. He's mean to her all the time, and he one day finds out that she is cheating on him with one of his employees. He tells her, I've got a sex tape of you. And she goes, no, you don't. And he shows it to her and he goes, oh man, what's that? Who's that squealing on the TV? Like, I love, man, it's so, like, it's a great way to start your film. You're like, oh shit, like, busted, bitch. You got caught red-handed. And he goes to her, he says, listen, for the rest of your natural life, you are going to be my loving and faithful wife, or else you're not going to get a dime of my inheritance. And she's like, ah, shit, I want to keep fucking this guy or whatever. And basically she goes to him and tells him, oh, listen, this guy is going to cut me out of the inheritance if I keep fucking you. We can't see each other anymore. And the beau that she's with says, well, why don't we kill him? And Lysette Anthony's like, oh, we can't do that. We're not murderers. And he goes, why not? It'll be easy. He's in a wheelchair. We can make it look like an accident. We just throw him down the stairs. And there's this moment where the both of them kind of look like, should we do this? Should we not do this? But they want that inheritance. They want to keep having sex together. So why not? So they plan and plot to kill the old man. Of course, they do. There's a little nod to another film in there. I don't want to spoil what the film is, but I'm sure if you wheelchair and stairs, I'm sure diehard cinemaniacs can figure that out. They plan to kill him, push him down the steps and whatnot, and then basically find out that all of his inheritance is in this safe, and he has the combination on his body when they bury him. So he like keeps it in a compartment in his watch. And they're like, holy shit, we have to go dig up his body and get that film, that combination out of his watch so we can get the $700 million of inheritance. So they drive to the town where he's going to get buried, and they run into Jeffrey Lewis at a bar. And Jeffrey Lewis is a lot of fun in this. And Jeffrey Lewis basically, he's hammered, drunk. He goes over to them and he goes, you're the wife of that guy who just passed, right? And he goes, they're like, yes. And he goes, well, I hate to tell you this, but you need to buy a more expensive coffin. And the two of them are like, what the fuck are you talking about? He goes, well, at night, the graveyard rats come out. Some of them as big as a dog, and they have vicious, sharp teeth and rabbit eyes, giant red eyes, and they'll eat that coffin in 2 seconds and eat your husband, your dead husband, with it. And the two of them are like, "Oh, you're just an all crazy old man trying to get us to buy a more expensive coffin. Ha, good try." And they go that night to basically dig the guy up. And as they start to, the rats come to get them. And man, it is a really fun segment of this just crazy graveyard rats terror ensues, man. It's absolutely fucking crazy. And it's a lot of fun to watch as these two fight for their lives. These two awful murdering gold diggers fight these practical rats for their lives. And the practical rats, I don't know how well you're all going to see that on the back here. These practical rats look absolutely fucking fantastic. They were just basically in the special features, they explained they were giant, like stuffed rats, like dolls. And man, I don't know, something about their eyes and the puppetry and simple, so simple, but so goddamn effective, because you got to think about it. This was the time where CGI started to take off. It was the late 90s, 96, especially 97. 97 was really the year where bam. But I mean, I'm sure they probably had the option here to go the CGI route. And Dan Curtis, being the old school veteran that he was, he probably said, "Hey, we're going practical with this. I want these people to make 8 or 9 giant ass graveyard rats, and we're going to use puppetry. We're going to use our imagination, a little bit of gore thrown in there, and we're going to make this work." And man, I got to say, I think it works fantastically. I love these effects. I think the effects almost steal the entire segment. And there's just this scene of Liza Anthony crawling through these rat holes, looking around with a flashlight, and her terrified eyes. She's these gorgeous green eyes, and they exploit them in every single segment. And I just absolutely love that. She has a great look to her. And I think any great leading actress needs to have that good, distinct look to her that sets her apart from somebody else. And Liza Anthony has that. She sells with her eyes the fear of getting eaten alive. And she's just going all around, and she's in the coffin and kicking these, and these rats are gnawing their way into the coffin, biting up her legs and shit, biting right through her leather boots. And as a kid, man, I was ready to shit my pants. I'm running around like, "Holy shit, bitch, get the fuck out of there. Don't get eaten by." But man, I don't know. It just every single time to this day, I think really works. And it's really scary. It's really well done segment. I really like it. I don't want to spoil the very ending, but you get the general idea and consensus, man. It's a really, really fun opening segment. Gold digging people battling the graveyard rats with Jeffrey Lewis, a drunk Jeffrey Lewis in a bar warning you. I mean, that's an awesome opening segment, man. I love that segment. I really do love the graveyard rats. Aiden Vavra's checked in. How are you doing, good brother? Watching Street Trash. Ooh, very interesting. The greatest trauma film that wasn't a trauma film, right? I mean, I guess that's the moniker I always gave it, at least. That's a fun one. That's one. It's funny. I've actually had a few people ask me to review that on the show. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but like I could give it a review. I just don't know if I go an hour on Street Trash. Like I definitely need a few more movies in there. Those rats, yeah, man, those rats are fantastic. I love the rats in this segment. They do such a good job with the practical effects. And it's funny, the special feature here, Practical Magic, the creature effects of Trilogy of Terror II, they were not happy with how the rats looked or how the doll looked in the killer doll looks in the final segment. Blows my mind, because I think this is one of the last great movies that uses 100% practical effects. There's not any stitch of CGI in this movie. And man, that's one of the biggest reasons why I love this. It's all practical effects horror movie. And I'm a sucker for that, man. If you go look, the one right behind me, man, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, that has all amazing practical effects. And man, it wins you over. It's another layer on top of the proverbial cake, right? And I think that practical effects really put this one over the top for me, which was funny to hear them say, "Oh, the less you show, the more blah, blah, blah." I got to be honest, everything they showed in this movie scared the shit out of me. So, I mean, in some cases, I could totally see less is more with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for sure. But with a film like this, I want to see everything, man. And this movie does not shy away from shit. They show you every single goddamn kill, every stitch of gore, every practical monster. And I think it all looks really good, man. I don't know. I don't know what these practical effects guys were saying. Like, they were like, oh, I'm ashamed we showed so much. I thought the original was better. And I'm like, I mean, you could think the original is better. I'm not trying to say the original isn't better or whatever. In my opinion, it's not. But I'm not trying to speak for anybody else. But to say that you did a poor job in these effects blew my mind, because I think the effects are one of the biggest stars of this movie, and a reason that I would put this over the original film. I don't know. That's just me, though. I'm just personally saying that. Oh, dude, anytime. Yeah, they had the whole Halloween 3 collection on Fright Rags, and I know it's your favorite, so I had to send that to you as soon as I saw it at work. I may get some Silver Shamrock socks myself, man. Yeah, I love Elm Street 4 too. But that brings us to segment number 2. That brings us to my favorite horror anthology segment of all time. You're damn right. I just said it. Deal with it. Better than The Raft. Better than anything in the original Creep Show. Better than Tales from the Dark Side of the movie. Better than Cat's Eye. Better than any horror anthology segment of all time. It is Story 2. It is Bobby. I fucking love Bobby. I think it's one of the best horror related things of all time, and it's something that I always watch annually on Halloween night. I usually watch this entire movie on Halloween night. But Bobby is my favorite story of the bunch. Bobby still tells the story of this grieving mother. The film opens, or the segment opens, I should say, with Liza and Anthony. She's driving home and putting her keys away. She lives in this nice big mansion, and there's no sign of a husband. There's only a portrait in the living room of a little boy sitting in a chair. And you just see she looks at this portrait every time she passes it, and she just looks all sad. And we go to find out that her son Bobby, years and years ago, drowned in this horrible accident on the beach, and she's never gotten over the loss of her son. Her husband's moved out, and she's just heartbroken over this. She can't deal with it. So one way or another, she decides to get into some black magic to try to resurrect her son. She puts the whole gambit out in the garage, the black star, the portrait of Bobby hanging over the lit candles and stuff, and bring me back my son Bobby. She wants Bobby back. She thinks initially, oh man, this was all mumbo jumbo, it didn't work. And one night she gets a knock at the door. It's pouring, raining, thunder, lightning, the classic horror setups, all the tropes. And that's why I love Dan Curtis, man. He's not afraid to go with the tropes and utilize them to his fucking advantage. What some would call cliche, Dan Curtis would call classic. And that's why I love Dan Curtis, man. And may he rest in peace, because I think he and I had a very similar way of looking at the genre. Whereas a lot of people, they go, oh, that's cliche, or oh, screw jump scares, or oh, screw the gag of the lightning, or all this stuff. I love that stuff, man. Why do we have to look down upon it? Are there cliches that don't work now? Sure. But man, I don't know. I think he's one of those guys. He embraced the little things in horror, and man, I do too. And that's why I think I have such a good bond with this movie. It's one of those movies. It does the little things, and that's why I love it. But of course, she gets a knock at the door one stormy night, and it is none other than her dead son, Bobby. And he's in this robe, and he's shivering, and he goes, "Mommy, is that you, Mommy?" And the kid actor does such a good job. I should get his damn name here. I don't know his name off the top of my head, and I don't know if he did much acting after it. His name is Blake Heron. It looks like he did do acting after this. Oh my goodness, this is really, I didn't know this. No, what? Okay, I am flabbergasted right now. Um, wow. Okay, I'm mind blown. I've never been more mind blown in my life. The actor's name was Blake Heron. He sadly passed away at age 35. Born and raised in my hometown. I am not even kidding you. Oh my goodness, how did he die? This is so sad. Oh, I'm sorry for the tonal change here. I did not know he had passed. Um, let's see. He performed on NCIS New Orleans. Uh, oh my goodness. Died on September 8th, 2017 at 35 years of age. He had passed addiction to drugs since he was 12 years old and once attended rehab for it. Authorities found several prescription drugs, but no illegal drugs. Oh my God. Jesus Christ, man. I'm like sad now. Oh God. That's just horrible. Well, I will say right here and now, because I was just about to say how great of an actor he was, and I didn't know if he had really done much acting after it, that I think Blake Heron does a phenomenal job in this role, and may he rest in peace. One of my hometown people. I mean, that's so crazy. We probably went to the same high school and everything. Wow, that is. I am absolutely fucking mind blown right now. I didn't know we were from the same town, and I didn't know that he had passed. So, Blake Heron, may you rest in peace. I am going to dedicate this episode to your memory because that is absolutely tragic. Yeah, that rest in peace, Blake Heron, man. Oh my gosh, man, that kills me inside. That's so sad. Um, I think he does such a wonderful job in this segment, and I think that his performance really puts this segment over the top as he comes back, and it's basically the old Pet Cemetery trope where the kid is not the same kid anymore. He sits down and, oh, mommy, he uses the word mommy a lot. He's like, oh, mommy, I love you, mommy. Did you love me before I left all those years ago? And she's like, of course I loved you, Bobby. He's really at first a baby face. He's oh, mommy, do you love me? Oh, mommy, can you make my favorite sandwich? Oh, mommy, this, oh, mommy, that. And it really suckers you into, all right, this kid's being too nice. This kid's being too kind to his mommy. And you know this shit's going to hit the fan. The question is as to, it's not if, it's a matter of when. And I just love the builds to it. And there's a point where he goes, mommy, were you really that nice to me though? And she goes, of course I was nice to you. And he goes, were you nice to me? And he gets a little bass in his voice and he starts to slowly but surely go mad as this segment goes on. And he just starts to threaten his mom. And he goes, you know, you shouldn't have been letting me playing down there by the rocks on the beach. You shouldn't have known her. And she just says, Bobby, I told you not to play by those rocks. And he goes, no, you didn't. And he runs out the room. And then all of a sudden, it's this crazy cat and mouse, deathly game of hide and seek between mother and dead son. And all the tropes they do in this are just absolutely phenomenal. I adore the tropes that they do in this. There's a scene where Bobby's throwing off chandeliers and they're crashing right next to her and she's freaking out. She runs over the phone to call her husband. You know, she's like, oh, Bobby's back, our son. And the dad's trying to calm her down. He's like, listen, he passed away. You're going crazy. You have to calm down. And she goes, he's trying to kill me. He goes, he's trying to kill you? He threw a chandelier at me. He threw a chandelier at you? Why are you repeating everything I'm saying? And he goes, repeating everything you're saying? And you find out that it's Bobby on the other line of the phone. And he starts laughing. He goes, I fooled you, didn't I, mommy? Fucking classic, man. I crack up every single time because, again, it's scary while it's going on, and it's a paid off laugh. You're like, oh my God, this little brat. He fooled her into thinking that, oh, she was calling for help. She's like, help me, and all this stuff. There's a point where he gets a little sledgehammer and he just starts fucking swinging for the fences trying to kill his own mom. And like, thinking about this on reality standpoint, imagine that. Imagine like trying to beat your mom to death with a sledgehammer. That scared the shit out of me as a kid. I was like, I never could think of something so sinister. And here the segment was where they battle each other to the death. She shoots the shit out of her son. He comes back, throws him out a window. He comes back. She gets in the car to drive away. He starts smashing up the car with a sledgehammer. The two of them, just an epic cat and mouse game between the two of them. She hides in the closet at one point, and he goes to open it. He turns the knob ever so slightly and goes, I think you're upstairs, mommy. He, of course, walks up the steps like he walked up the steps. She opens the door, and he's right there. And every single gag that Dan Curtis tries to pull here, It worked for me. I don't know. I know there are a lot of people that probably watch this and go, oh, cliche, all this, all that. Watch this segment. Every fucking gag works for me. I love, love, love how he spaced and paced it out. I thought it was really well done. And of course, the end, she thinks she's gotten rid of Bobby once and for all. He shows up walking up the steps. He's talking all this shit. You know, mommy, Bobby never loved you, Bobby and mommy. I don't think you were very nice to Bobby. And he walks up the steps ever so slowly. She's backing up in similar vein to The Shining again. And she turns around. He's right there. And he goes, "Oh!" She falls down the steps and she's just like waiting there, blood and all this terror written all over her face. And Dan Curtis, this excellent direction here as Bobby walks down the stairs ever so slowly as the lightning flashes. You see him start to transform into this fucking demon. And Bobby is like, you know what, mommy? You know what I think? I think Bobby killed himself. I think Bobby drowned himself because he wanted to get away from you. And so when you wanted him back, he sent me instead. And you see that Bobby is revealed to be this demon. When I was a kid, I fucking flipped out watching this. I thought it was the best thing I had ever watched. And I still do think it's amazing. Like, just how scary and well done it was. And even though there are some laughs in there, they're not really the most intentional laughs, but man, it's entertaining. And that's why I think as a whole, why this movie works as an anthology. It's entertaining. There's not one slow segment. There's not one scene where I go, oh, I wish they would have cut that, or I wish they would have trimmed this. It's short and sweet and to the point. And that's why I love Trilogy of Terror 2, man. That Bobby segment is like it's probably my favorite horror anthology segment of all time. I absolutely adore it. I think both actors do great. Lysette Anthony and Mr. Blake Heron, who, may he rest in peace. I had no honest to God clue that he had passed away and that he was from Massapequa. Like, that blows my mind all over the room, man. So I will, in turn, because I didn't know that, I feel terrible. I will dedicate this episode to the memory of Blake Heron because he absolutely stole that segment for me, and I forever was afraid of anyone by the name of Bobby just because of him. I really I want to put him over here, man. Rest in peace, Blake Heron. Um, so Aiden comments, this sounds insane. I'll definitely give this sequel a watch. Yeah, it's free on YouTube, so that's a really good thing about this. You don't have to splurge. The Blu-ray looks nice. I will say that there are some points in this where, and they do say this before the film starts, that it is a 2K rendered film. So this wasn't made for TV movies. So there are some spots where the negatives, they couldn't really obtain them. So there are some spots that don't look like Blu-ray, but the ones that do, and a majority of the ones that do look fantastic. And this is the best you'll ever see this movie look. You'll never get a 4K of this movie. It's amazing to me that there's a Blu-ray of it at all. So, man, hats off to Felcher. I think he did a wonderful job with this. And, of course, the couple features that are on it, I think he did a really, really good job. But that brings us to the final segment. Oh, yes, the main event of the evening of the Trilogy of Terror 2, if you will. This is He Who Kills, of course, the sequel to the original segment with Karen Black of the Zuni Fetish doll trying to kill, conquer, and destroy and all that good stuff, of course, takes center stage on the cover with Lysette Anthony. This is He Who Kills. And basically, it takes place right after the Karen Black segment. They don't spend it's literally you see the crime scene after Karen Black's been killed. Of course, we don't see Karen Black. We just see her feet. You get the idea she's been killed. And they bring this doll into forensics, and basically the forensic scientist is played by Lysette Anthony, and she starts to take the doll apart. She has some pizza at night with the security guards, and then the Zuni Fetish doll comes to life and starts wreaking havoc and cleaning fucking house. Your classic killer doll segment sequel here. I have a lot of fun with this one. It's funny enough, and people will probably think I'm crazy for this. Of the three segments, the last one is actually, I think, the weakest. And I know it's bizarre to say that, but I will say it is in a lot of ways just a rehash of the first segment with Karen Black. But with that being said, it's a really fun rehash, and it's a really entertaining rehash. And Lysette Anthony, again, does a really, really good job acting in this one. There's a lot of good gags where Dan Curtis puts the camera really low, and he does these shots where they put the doll on a zip line. and they almost did this thing where they charge its feet up, almost in similar vein to what the Flintstones would do when they'd run in their car, and have it run across the zip line to make it look like the doll was actually running. It looks so good to me. You really think this doll is running around, causing chaos, and it's not CGI. It's all practical once again. And I thought they did a really good job. They did a really good job using the camera in a similar vein to how Sam Raimi would use it in The Evil Dead with the overhang shots and the shots that go through the house and out the doors. This, they did a low camera angle shot to really make you feel like you were in the perspective of this killer doll and running around with it, like seeing what it saw while it ran around. I thought that was excellent. I thought it was really, really well done. And, it's funny, again, in the practical effects, segment on this special features, they said, oh, well, we didn't really like it, and I was just like, wow, like I thought they did such a wonderful job with that. It's so funny. They actually do tell a funny anecdote where in the original film, they had this guy underneath the floor running around with the doll like on a stick, so it would make it look like the doll was running. And they said that there was one day where he was running and Karen Black was on the other side of the room and he was trying to run towards Karen Black. He ran and hit his head on a pipe. So he ran, and ping, hit his head on the pipe, and the doll went flying at Karen Black. They kept that shot in the film because it looked so good. It looked like the doll actually took off and leaped at her. Amazing how something on accident could be such an iconic horror shot, and how a lot of people say, hey, the first Trilogy of Terror, that doll segment is the main event of the evening. That's the thing we all remember. And I just love how they accidentally kind of fell into that. And here, I like the battle here. It's a fun little battle. It's another 20-minute battle or so where, there's points where the doll is pulling on the door, trying to open the door. It's a funny shot. There's a point where she puts it in a suitcase and she thinks, all right, I'm fine now. I got to get help. And the doll starts cutting its way out of the suitcase, and she goes to grab the knife, of course, gets her hands all cut up. There's a point where he shoots a bow and arrow at the security guard, and he's wiping the floor with the security guards. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to make a, less than a foot tall doll your main antagonist and somehow make it scary and somehow make it entertaining and funny and all those things at the same time. I really like the Zuni fetish doll. I like the look of it, the design, how they did it practically, how they made the doll move. I thought the stuff really worked, and I thought it really looked good. Of course, you do get kind of the same exact ending as the first Trilogy of Terror Zuni doll, Zuni fetish doll segment. So it is the same exact story, basically, with just a different actress, different day. But I think they tone up the violence a little bit, and I think there's fun. Like, there's a point where she puts it in acid, she tries to drown it in acid. I was like, oh, that's a cool thing. Instead of throwing it in the oven, you try to drown it in the acid. I thought that was an interesting kind of take on trying to kill the doll. All in all, man, I thought this one really worked. I really liked the final segment. I do think, though, for whatever it's worth, that it is the weakest of those three. But all of them I enjoy, I love, and they make me realize why I loved Dan Curtis as a filmmaker. He's, again, I was saying this before, he's a guy that appreciated the little things, the simple, the lightning, striking, and the thunder as a character says a dramatic line. A lot would say cliche. Me and Dan Curtis will say classic. And I think there's a full charm to that. And I think that this movie and Trilogy of Terror 1 and Dead of Night and, of course, Dark Shadows and, of course, Burnt Offerings, they all have that small charm that this movie brings. And I think, for what it's worth, it's amazing that a movie could come out in the late 90s where horror was really struggling at that time, and Scream would really go on to reinvent the genre, where this is just old school, classic fashion American horror. You know how Hatchet always says, oh, we're old school fashion American horror and not a remake or a sequel or whatever. This is really that tagline. Like, I would put that tagline in this movie. This is old school, kicking it old school, fashionable American style horror, and at its fucking best, in my opinion. I love Trilogy of Terror 2, man. I will put this one over the top. I will give it a solid 10 out of 10 rating. My favorite horror anthology horror film of all time. I just think this is an excellent, excellent film. Please do watch. It's free on YouTube, and the Blu-ray goes for pretty cheap. So, I mean, that's always a really nice thing. So, all right, I'm about 45 minutes in. I guess we're going to end the show there. We'll end this one a little bit early this week. I just only had the one film to talk about. I'm thinking, I think I have the DVD here. No. I was thinking about doing. I thought I had the DVD here, but I guess not. I wanted to do another anthology movie next week called Three Extremes. So I'm thinking about doing that one. That's one is from 3 different countries, 3 different directors. I think that would be a really fun one to do. I'm going to try to do some more anthology ones. I have the Cat's Eye Blu-ray somewhere over here. That's one I want to do at some point. I also got the Creep Show season 1 in, so I could also do an episode on that. Like, I definitely, I don't know why I've been more into anthologies lately, so maybe September will be anthology month. I don't know, but I don't know. It was really cool talking about my all-time favorite one, and the one that I watch every single Halloween night. It's the perfect movie to watch on Halloween night. Like this, Halloween 3, Night of the Demons, like that's a great marathon right then and there, man. And I love always giving Dan Curtis his props because I think he's one of the best masters of horror of all time that never really gets his due, and I think that's a damn shame. So this episode is dedicated to the memory of him and, of course, Mr. Blake Heron, who passed away way too goddamn young. And, man, I please rest in peace, sir. Your performance, absolutely astounding. And it pretty much steals my favorite horror anthology segment of all time. And a lot of that's because of him. So, once again, rest in peace, Mr. Blake Heron. Okay, so this will be uploaded now. I'm going to go off the air. I want to say thank you to Aiden for tuning in. I really do appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of Street Trash. I'm going to go watch my favorite Batman film of all time. I got the 4K, that's right, of Batman Forever. That is right. I'm going to go give that a watch with my buddy. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a really fun movie night. Watching that one on 4K. So that's going to be really cool. But everybody have a wonderful, wonderful 3-day weekend. Keep it creepy. I will be back next week as always, taking names and kicking ass. As always, you know the Pajama Pants play at its best. The Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. That's me. That's John Grande. So thank you again. I appreciate anybody and everybody. Check this out. If you want, give me a like, a sub, whatever, a comment. If you've seen this one, if you haven't seen this one, let me know what you think if you have. And if you haven't, get on that shit. It's a great, great, great horror movie. So thanks to everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful 3-day weekend. Too sweet. Peace. And we will catch you next time only on Grande's